Today on Inspired Money.
You can live off $40,000 if you want, if everything's paid off, and you're not trying to, keep up with the Joneses. That you can do what you want to do. It's just, what's most important to you, your freedom to be able to hang out with your kids and do those things and go fishing or whatever at your when you want to, or you want to be slave to your job or your career or all that stuff. So I think that's the money never was the driving factor in any of this. It was just creating choices.
This is episode 145 with real estate investor and entrepreneur Dan Butler. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey there, Inspired Moneymaker. Welcome back. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Today we're talking with Dan Butler. He left the corporate world in 2014 to work full-time in real estate. Since 2001, he's been buying and managing single-family homes, duplexes, and small multifamily apartment buildings. One of the reasons why I wanted to get Dan on the show, in addition to doing the investing, is that he owns multiple businesses, companies that serve each other. A vertically integrated real estate business that includes realty, property management, maintenance, lending, and even virtual staffing. To give you an idea of size and scope, Dan is co-founder of CrestCore Realty, and it currently manages over 3,000 properties in Tennessee for over 700 local, national, and international investors. In this episode, you'll learn the importance of building systems and processes into your business, how Dan and his wife manage their expenses when shopping, and why you might consider virtual staffing. Now let's get inspired with Dan Butler. Dan, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
I've always been a saver. Grew up in a middle-class family. Just recognized that, you had to work hard to earn. And so I think my earliest memory would be when I was 11 or 12 years old and decided I need to control part of my destiny. And that was to create a lawn care business. And so I pieced together some equipment and just started getting after it, asking neighbors if I could cut their yard. And that led into a flourishing business that carried me through high school and all the way through college. So that was, if I really had to nail it down, I would say, for my journey through real estate and entrepreneurship and all that stuff, I think that it all started with that when I was 10 or 11 years old, starting that lawn care business.
That is an early start, and cool that you put it together and stuck with it. I'm sure that covered a lot of expenses while you were in school.
Yeah, I can remember fraternity trying to get me to sell T-shirts, and had a box of T-shirts, trying to fundraiser, and I would just hand them $200 and pay for the T-shirts because I needed to go cut grass. And so I can remember stuff like that kept me focused on, taking care of the client, taking care of the customer, and cutting grass and making nice yards and making money in the meantime. So,
Dan, I'm so excited to talk to you today because you've been able to build a vertically integrated real estate business, and I look forward to getting into that. You were lucky to find a mentor pretty early on in your life. Can you take us back to the time when you decided that you wanted to be in real estate?
Yeah, it really started probably my freshman, sophomore year of high school. My mentor at that time, I was helping him cut his yards, which led to, boarding up houses, fixing little leaks here and there. And so it was a lot of time in the truck, driving from house to house. And I just remember him talking about wealth creation, and his father-in-law had actually, that's how he had made his success, had an antique store and then also had this real estate on the side. So from that point on, I knew that I wanted to do real estate as part of my career. I didn't know what path it was going to take. I just knew I wanted to do it. And in my mind, it was to have choices at some point in your life by having that, buying real estate, rental properties.
Through the grunt work that you were doing, what were some of the positives that you saw?
Compared to my friends, I think I created a work ethic, a passion, seeing a finished product, those kind of things that still carry with me to this day. My reputation, I end up actually literally shutting the business down my junior year of college, as I was transitioning to my final year, because my brother, he was kind of running it for me, but he had other priorities. It wasn't keeping the lawn care business up. And it was more important to me, my reputation, than it was to keep that thing and try to keep it running. So I actually shut it down. And the one key lesson I learned there is I should have sold it because it was worth something. I just shut it down day one, when I decided and made that decision. But anyway, there's a lot of lessons in that as well.
So knowing that you wanted to get into real estate long term, how did that affect your course of study in college and what you were planning to do as a student?
I went into mechanical engineering because I loved math, but I quickly learned I didn't like mechanical engineering. I knew I didn't want to be a designer sitting behind a desk designing HVAC systems and stuff, but I loved the way it taught me to think, really stepping back and looking at your options and looking at, analysis and coming up with solutions. So it really matched. If I looked at my God-given talent, is one of them is solving problems. And so it fed into that ability. And I think that fits right into real estate because every real estate deal you come across is solving a problem, whether you're buying it for value add or buying it to try to make sure you're not getting the shaft on the purchase price versus the rents and all the variables that go in there with people shooting out pro formas and those kind of things. So to me, it just helped me prepare my mind for that mindset of just getting down to, is this a good deal, long term, or is it just, smoke and mirrors and that kind of thing? So I think that's really helped me throughout my 20 years of real estate investing.
Did the engineering also help you to become like a systems and process guy? I get a sense that that's an important part of what you do today.
For sure, because coming out of college, I got training in Six Sigma Black Belt, Lean Kaizen, which is, eliminating non-value added activities and those kind of things. So definitely systems and processes is a core piece of our business. I think that, the engineering piece, I went in manufacturing operations. So that was one piece I guess I forgot to say earlier, like I enjoyed coaching people and leading people. So I don't like to get in the nitty gritty, but I like to lead and delegate and hold accountable. And part of that is building systems that people can have clarity of what their expectations are, so you can have success. So definitely repeatable processes is a huge part of from engineering to manufacturing to on to real estate and managing properties and those kind of things.
So you were working in manufacturing. How do you start? What is your first real estate investment? It sounds like you're doing that while you're working.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of my journey. I mean, moved to Memphis, Tennessee from South Carolina back in 1998. And, as soon as I got my feet on the ground and kind of got, call it 99, 2000, I started looking for real estate. And in 2001, and things were different back then, because you could buy property with no money down pretty easily. The banks were pretty loose, for lack of better words. And I found a 19-unit apartment building and got the bank that basically let me take over the note and modify it for the previous owner. So out of pocket zero and bought a 19-unit. Now, the interesting part of that is I should never have bought that because I was underinsured, no renter's insurance, 4 units burned up the first month, had no relationships with contractors, didn't understand how to fix stuff. I mean, I was 27 years old and just way underwater but as I was talking to Rhea last night at a little meeting, and I think for me, that was like, do I look at that as a failure or look at it as like a learning experience and how to grow from it and make sure I did the things that would never happen again. So to me, I'm glad it happened. I hated it happen. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but it parlayed into, man, if I can get through this in real estate, I can get through about anything. Because it was, I was $100,000 behind on cost versus insurance. I mean, I had to figure out a ton of stuff to get through that and, keep on rolling.
Wow. That sounds like there is a lot in there. You're 27 years old. What was the vision and rationale? I mean, is it you see 19 units and that's going to generate some cash flow, right?
what was interesting about that was, again, the owner presented to us what it should be doing. And then when we get it, it's not what it's doing. So that was my first foray into like really understanding the numbers and coming up with good estimates on what your maintenance should be. Your taxes, get hard quotes on insurance and those kind of things. But it made me sit back and say, all right, why am I doing this? What am I doing? What am I trying to get to? And so I can literally remember sitting on an airplane going to California with my manufacturing job and laying out a plan to get to 300 houses free and clear by the time I was 45, 48 years old. I think I was 48 years old. So to me, part of this story is like creating a vision of where you want to go, because I can't tell you how many investors I talk to. I talk to a lot of investors all over the country that are wanting to get in real estate. And they're getting into it because they were at a barbecue and their buddy said, man, I just bought some rentals in Memphis, Tennessee. And that's not a good vision. You know what I mean? That's not a plan. That's not a vision. That's just throwing some money at something you're hoping for a return versus I want to get in real estate, or I'll buy some rentals, or I want to own 300 houses by the time I'm 45 with producing X amount of income. See what I'm saying? There's a totally different shift in your plan to get there. Because the first one, I don't think you can have a plan. You're going to waddle along and muddle through it. And,
So planning is very important. I heard you talk one time about that first property investment and that your gut told you that the guy who started the fire, you didn't have a good feeling about that guy. Years later, you have so much more experience. How would you have handled that today?
I would take action immediately. Have that guy post notice, give him warnings to move out, those kind of things. So the interesting part of that is, and I haven't told this yet, is that same apartment building, I had a fire last year, burned up 7 units, not 4, but 7. And 17 years later, that experience was totally different. You drive up, you get the call, you make sure everybody's safe. That's your number one priority, that, nobody's hurt. And then after that, you start making calls, texts, get your crews, get after it. It didn't even faze me. I was like, oh, wait, this might be a money-making opportunity in several ways. Number one, in just, the cost of the insurance versus what it costs you to do it. Plus, I raised every one of the rents $75, because now I got a brand new, completely updated apartment that I didn't have, before. So it's just interesting through wisdom, experience, failure, time, staying with it, how two similar fires and two different experiences and outcomes, through doing the real estate for the long term.
Goes to show what experience will do to help you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That first experience could have stopped you in your tracks. That could have stopped you from continuing that dream and vision to be in real estate. How were you able to close the money gap that you needed to get it fixed up and stay with it?
So I think that's a two-part answer. One is I consulted with attorneys about it, and just they gave me some language to talk to the insurance company and adjuster and the agent about, to kind of just put a scare in them, like in the sense of, we don't want to drag this thing out. Let's get this thing settled and be fair about it. And so they came up on their, from 58,000, I think they came up to 88,000, and the insurance cost was, say, 111. Well, 6 months in, I was able to take it to the bank because we're upgrading and bought it at a good price. I was able to refinance that thing 6 months later and pay for that difference. And so essentially what I did was extend my note. Was a 15-year note. I'm a year into it. I reset it to another 15 years. I lost, quote, a year in that process, but I was now 28 years old, and I wasn't, negative 30,000 or 40,000 in cash. I was able to get the apartment back genning and cash flowing and sustaining itself. So
you are a problem solver. That was a big problem, and you got through it.
Yeah, that's like I said. That was my big thing. It was like I knew that I was going to be in real estate for the long term, because I was like, if I can get through this, then buying a single house here and there is going to be a piece of cake compared to what that was.
So navigating through that experience, what was your plan getting back to planning?
I bought that first one in 2001, and I bought my second apartment in 2002. So I let the dust settle, got that fixed, and then I moved on to the second apartment. And, I'd read some books. I think it was Robert Allen, maybe No Money Down in the 90s or something like that. And I really, truly hung on to that principle. So I did, I tried to figure out that math. And then I also had the wherewithal, the wisdom through, books or whatever, because podcasts weren't really around back then. It's kind of funny to think about that, but just creating local bank relationships. I think that's where I had a local bank that was interested, found another apartment, and the owner was willing to take a second for 20% of the cost. So I bought my second apartment with no money down. So there's two apartments that I was able to, at 27, 28 years old, get in without any money out of pocket. And so that was probably, call it $800,000 worth of assets that I was able to buy with, no money down. So
that is amazing. I mean, that goes against what I think many people would be assuming. They'd figure that if you're going to get started, you need to be saving money so that you can put that down payment.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that, because I just said that last night. My mindset was, I want that 20% in my pocket to save for the what ifs. And so, one thing that my business partner and I, we joke about it now, but like, we were willing to give our personal guarantee to any of these assets. That was kind of we're okay with our personal guarantee. Like a lot of people stick their flag in and say, I'm not doing a personal guarantee. I'm going to do non-recourse. I'm not putting my name on anything. We were willing to do that, but we wanted to not have money in this deal. So that was kind of our absolute, like, how do we figure out not have money out of pocket? Because we wanted to have the cash reserves. Because that's where I've seen investors mess up over the years is they go hard, they put that $100,000 down or $30,000 down, but that's their only $30,000 they got. You know what I mean? And then you're stuck. If something happens, something burns up, or you have 2 or 3 turnovers or whatever, and you don't have the cash. So then it just spirals out of control. Then it's vacant. Now you can't pay taxes, you can't pay insurance. Then the maintenance is deferred. I mean, and then all of a sudden you're giving that property back to the bank.
Right. And if you're in that situation, you're not in a good position to go to the bank to ask for money.
Oh, yeah, you're in trouble then. Absolutely. Yep. And we joked back then, like, after the first $1 million of personal guarantees, it's like, what's it matter anymore? Like, it's either going to work or it's not. Like, this is either going to keep flourishing or I'm going to have to just give it all back. So we just got over that hurdle of that personal guarantee was, such a big deal to stick your flag in and say, I'm not doing that. So anyway, maybe that's stubbornness on our part, but that's what led to us to be able to build a portfolio. So,
did you have a clear goal that you wanted to reach a certain number of properties before quitting your full-time job?
Yeah, I mean, I think back then I had written on that plane ride that I wanted to have 300 houses. And really the only reason I had that number was probably because I knew somebody back home in South Carolina that had 300 houses, and everybody knew that he could do what he wanted, when he wanted, how he wanted. And so he was the role model I was shooting for. But, in your math, if you do it, 300 houses, and if it's half of them are free and clear and others are going towards that, the math works. And part of that goal, and I'm leaving part of this out, is have no debt on the other side, my house paid for and stuff like that. So there's some goals that I wanted to hit before I quit corporate, to where you can live off, 40,000. I mean, if anybody says they need $200,000 to live, I mean, that's just crazy. Like, you can live off $40,000 if you want, if everything's paid off, and you're not trying to, keep up with the Joneses. You can do what you want to do. It's just, what's most important to you, your freedom to be able to hang out with your kids and do those things and go fishing or whatever. And at your, when you want to, or are you going to be slave to your job or your career or all that stuff? So I think that's, the money never was the driving factor in any of this. It was just creating choices.
Mm. Well, you mentioned also that you grew up middle class and with a work ethic. So it sounds like you were maintaining that. You weren't spending money excessively. You had also goals and a target to live within your means.
Yeah, I had some mentors and some advice and just things I read, just personal beliefs around, say you raise your salary, like coming out of college, you raise your salary $10,000, $20,000. Say it's $20,000. Well, just bump your lifestyle up $5,000. You know what I mean? That's where people mess up, is they do 20 and maybe some more because they've leveraged a bigger house or that stuff. And so my wife and I, thankfully, were aligned. We still, people were shocked last night at this RIA that I told them we still do the Dave Ramsey envelope system, to this day. I'm 46 years old, and we've been doing it, my wife and I, for 18 years, where we pull money out and have money for groceries and for the dog and for Target. And once that's up, that's up. And we just, our bank account only has, the statement only shows like 10 line items. Those are things that you got to pay, like the utility bill, for example. Like I'm not going to pull cash out and go pay that just doesn't make sense. But so, yeah, I think there's some principles around that we still carry to this day and, try to instill in our kids and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you continue to pay close attention when you go to the grocery store.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, if you're out of money in the grocery envelope, hey, what's in the freezer? You'd be amazed. I challenge you when you go back home and look at your freezer and how many meals you can make that probably wouldn't happen for the next several months just because it's out of sight, out of mind. And you got money that you spent sitting in that freezer that you're just paying to keep frozen every day. So.
Was it a hard decision to leave your job?
Yeah. My wife wanted me to leave a year before I did. She saw how hard I worked. I was working 90 hours a week with 2 jobs between real estate investing and then my corporate. I had I was over 10 manufacturing plants all over the U.S. So I was traveling nonstop. And she had that belief in me. But I just wanted to have my house paid off and I wanted to have things in order to get my cars paid off. I just wanted my minimal expenses before I jumped. And so looking back, I could have done it earlier, but I always think things happen for a reason. And so I think for me, I had peace with the timing that I did it. And I wouldn't change any of that from the standpoint of just parlaying that into entrepreneurship. So, I had the best of both worlds. I just worked a ton of hours to get there, but I was working 7 days a week to have that double career with, real estate entrepreneurship and my manufacturing job.
Coming up, we talk about Dan's different businesses, using net profit to measure success, and the power of virtual staffing. All that and more right after this short break. The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/145. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Dan, his companies, and other things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Since Dan mentioned that he learned a lot about systems from working in manufacturing, and he applies that knowledge to his real estate businesses, I want to talk about processes and systems for your money. One of the things that you can do is automate more and think less. A lot of the time when it comes to personal finance, the more you think through things, the more trouble you can get yourself into. Sometimes there's analysis paralysis, where we think too much and don't make important decisions. A few things that you might consider automating. One of the easiest is automatically contributing a certain percentage of your salary to your 401k or employer-sponsored retirement plan. Do you remember how much you're contributing right now? I hope that you're at least contributing the maximum to get the company match, if your company offers that. If you have not increased your contribution in a while, consider doing that. Set a long-term goal to max out your annual contribution if you can. Another thing you can do is to use direct deposit to automatically deposit your paycheck into your bank account. Then set up automatic transfers of a certain amount to other accounts. That might be an emergency fund account or savings for a vacation. You can also set up automatic transfers to a brokerage account for investments. A third thing that you can do is automatically pay bills and credit cards with auto bill pay. Of course, you should still review statements to make sure that they're accurate. With all these things, you're trying to make more automatic. Where entrepreneurs use processes and systems to make their businesses more efficient, you can do the same with your money. Automate more, think less, and over time, that consistency is likely to pay off in a big way. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. That's Runnymede, RUNNYMEDE Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. Let's do something fun on social media. Take a screenshot of this podcast right now and tag me. On Instagram, I'm inspiredmoney.fm, or on Twitter, I'm RunnymedeCap. That's RUNNYMEDECAP. That's short for Runnymede Capital. Let's connect on social media. I'll even mail you an Inspired Money sticker. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. Dan, you have a lot of companies when I look at your bio. Can you tell us about how that developed over time? What was the evolution starting with investment in properties to build like a portfolio of businesses?
So it's interesting. Yeah, to your point, I mean, I think, I'm a big believer of the one thing. There's a book, Jay Papasan, Gary Keller, the one thing, that singular focus. So all I did was buy and hold the BRRRR strategy for 10 years. And my business partner, we started together probably in 2007. And we actually run together. I don't know if you saw that, but we've been running for 15 years, 4 days a week, 6 a.m., rain or shine. And those are our business strategy meetings. But anyway, on one run, we decided if we wanted to create something bigger than just owning some houses, that we need to start managing for others to create fee income that then we could hire people to manage ours. And so we did that. And then you realize, wait a second, now we're managing 1,000 houses. We could manage our own maintenance and be much more efficient and make a little bit of money on the back end. And then we went through the recession, and so about 08 to 12, all these houses were coming at us. We had limited capital. So, why not have a brokerage that would help investors do what we were doing? Everything's vertically integrated and every business feeds off of each other. So that's kind of our easiest entree into business, is ones that we're going to be the biggest client. So in our portfolio of houses, we're the biggest client of property management. Property management is the biggest client of the maintenance company. We are the biggest client of the brokerage, buying and selling. You know what I mean? So it creates that fee income for each business by having your own internal. Same thing with, the virtual assistant company. We are the biggest. We have 120 virtual employees, and half of them are ours for our internal companies. And so that's the sustaining power to make us help build systems, billing. We bill each company for their virtual assistant company. We make a markup on that to ensure that we are making smart decisions across the companies. So
let's review really quickly. What are the names of the companies? How many are there?
We have CrestCore Property Management. Our portfolios, just Your Home LLC was original for the properties, but CrestCore Property Management, CrestCore Realty, CityLight Commercial Services is the maintenance. CoreAssist is the virtual. CoreLend is our lending company. And that's really the main ones right now that we have.
Is there CoreBuild also?
CoreBuild, yeah, we've had that. We actually have paused that one. We realized that we were, and again, this is an interesting piece of learning. We were doing work for outside people, and it wasn't for internal work. And so it's a whole different set of systems, a whole different set of expectations. And we just decided, for us, that wasn't worth the effort. We'd rather grow the lending business to help the brokerage sell more houses because we have financing available. That's a much more easier thing than going visiting a house in, downtown that you're going to help a flipper flip, and have a retail flip is much different on materials and all that kind of stuff than a rental that it's the same paint, the same tile, the same floor. Does that make sense? It just keeps us more singular focused. So we've had a hardware business. We shut that down. Just didn't fit our model. Through all the successes that you've named of the businesses, we've also had some that we just said, this isn't working for us. So we've shuttered them and moved on. We can't, if they're not going to make us a 15% net margin, that's just not worth our time.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that you like to focus on that margin number. So you're willing to try businesses, but if it's not working out, then you shut it down.
Yes. And one thing that we messed up early on, I love to talk about failures just as much as success, or more than success. We messed up early on. It was just the Dan and Douglas show, my business partner, where we would create these businesses, and it was all on us. And where we made a big difference, as mind shift, is we're not going to start a business until we have a leader that can lead that business. And so money's last for us. So we'll take 2 steps backwards to go 3 steps forward, in the sense of, we'll start this lending business, we'll give up profitability and all that kind of stuff. But now that person's singular focus, when he wakes up in the morning, he's pumped to go do the next loan, make that next deal. And so we've seen a shift for us of, if we can find a leader that can run that business, we will invest in that leader. And hopefully we're trying to get a homegrown bench to where when that next business that we come up with, like for example, doing title work and collections, we should have our own attorney, title agency. But we're not going to do it till we have somebody that can run it. But we have so much business. We have 40 plus closings a month that happen between the brokerage and lending, and that's a normal attorney's office. It's a sizable amount of closings. So, but we won't do it until we find that leader that can run it, and we'll share in that profitability of that business with that person that's running it.
I love the idea that you're your own biggest customer. I mean, it sounds like from that, you are enjoying some cost savings because you're serving your own company. And then any additional business that you're doing for external customers, that's incremental growth that you're experiencing while you're eating your own cooking.
Correct.
You're the customer, so you see it from both sides.
Yeah, I mean, and from a marketing standpoint, from like property management, I love what we say, that exact same phrase, we eat our own cooking. So I'm on this podcast with you, and my whole team is managing our properties while I'm talking to you. So my systems have got to be buttoned up, and if they're not, I need to be holding that person accountable to get them to where they are, because I need it as cheap as I can. I need the highest collections. I need things leased as quickly as possible, because I have notes to pay. I have banks that are that expect their payment. So this thing's got a gin, and so we definitely want to eat our own cooking as part of our story. That's part of who we are and who we want to be.
Getting back to the one thing, it seems challenging to do many different things really well. Is that why the key that you've figured out is really to put the right leader in the right position for each division? It's not like you and Doug are running everything, because it sounds like a lot.
Yes, that is correct. I mean, we were trying to run it all ourselves early on, and we realized that and one thing that I would tell you that for those that have partnerships out there, one thing we've had clarity on the last 6 months, I mean, this is new for us, is we used to rule by committee. So we were both running every business, if that makes sense. So it created a very fuzzy management structure, created a very a way for leaders to get out of being held accountable, because they could just say, well, I'm not sure what Dan wants versus Douglas, or vice versa. Does that make sense? Versus we finally made that decision, like, no, you report to me and you report to him, and I don't talk to you day to day as far as like your business and holding you accountable. But these over here, y'all report to me, and we're going to run these businesses like I see fit. And then Douglas and I have to hold each other accountable outside of that for each of the businesses that we're managing. So we literally meet every Monday at 10 a.m. to present our scorecard for our business leaders and talk through, what's red, what's green, and what needs to be improved, or all that kind of stuff. So we use Traction. I don't know if you're familiar with Traction. It's the EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. So for your listeners, I would highly recommend that book and try to implement the principles around it. It helps you create a vision, helps you create your scorecards, your rocks, how to gauge, the success of your people, all that stuff, all the way down to, we have remote team members, the virtual employees in the Philippines. They have numbers they're held accountable for. So it's everybody in the organization has that one number that we hold them accountable for, which, if you think about it, in your business, if you just had, each employee had one number, like what's the success of that day can be tied to one number, and how well you did to move that number to where it needed to be, versus all these other things are important, but we try to get it down to where this is your one number. Like, so I literally, for this call, I was almost late. I was just with the maintenance company, technician efficiency. That's the one number that drives whether those guys had a successful day or not. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I mean, it sounds measurable, and the expectation is clear.
Yep. And a mantra and a rallying cry, if you will, for each person, each business. So yeah, that's, and again, this is a 10-year journey. This isn't just something we happened overnight. This is a lot of trial and error and a lot of mistakes to get this to where we are now, and seeing a lot of success getting it, doing it this way. Let's
talk about CoreAssist and the virtual staffing. How did you get into this business?
So we started with my business partner, I, more so him than me, go to real estate conferences, and one of the vendors there provided third-party services from India. And so we would send invoices every night to India, scan them, and then they'd come back miraculously in the computer, all input. All we had to do is print the check to the vendor and move on. And we did that for a couple of years. And then we met a guy in Dallas. We were in a mastermind group. We met a guy in Dallas that was managing 300 houses with 12 people from India. And my business partner didn't believe me. He's like, that's impossible. Like,
How many people did he have?
12.
12. Wow.
12 people in India. And so my business partner from Dallas, he went to Dallas that 2 months later for Thanksgiving. He called me on Thanksgiving Day, which we never, that's just unusual. So I was like, oh, what's going on? And, he's like, man, just went to that guy's office. He has no employees. It's just him. He's like, you're right. Like, how do we figure this out? So anyway, so we found somebody that offered that service to find us employees that would be our people. We hired them. And then we realized, you know what, we are going to be so big with this that we need to have our own business. And so we kind of transitioned over about 6 months, and we created CoreAssist, started hiring our own people. And we use the same principles. We hire virtual employees as we do our internal ones. So we use this thing called Culture Index. It's a behavior-based, tool that you can see kind of the strengths and where they naturally fit and what kind of roles. So yeah, and then we just had friends and peers, in the industry. Like, we literally have 2 or 3 competitors in town, property management companies that we provide virtual employees for. And so part of our story is we had to get over the fact of helping others get better. Like, that's not, who cares? This world's big enough for everybody. So
what is the delta that you see? You talked about a 15% margin goal in your businesses when you hire virtual assistants versus hiring a full-time employee locally. How big a savings is that?
To me, it turns into almost like a 4x return. And what I mean by that, it's about half the cost or even more, and you get almost double the output. And the reason for that is, like, say like our cost, just call it $10 an hour. I'm just throwing out a round number. That's your all-in cost. There's no workers' comp, there's no insurance or taxes. So if you hired somebody from us, that, just say it's a round number, versus you go out and hire somebody off the street, that's $40,000 plus minimum, plus healthcare and all the other riffraff that comes with it, all your benefits and stuff. And then because they're home-based, as we're learning through this remote, this is interesting times to be even talking about this with what's going on. We're all stuck at home or whatever.
Yeah, this seems like a very 21st century piece of your business, but now because of COVID-19, it's like even accelerated.
It's very relevant. That's right. People now get it. Like, there's going to be some light bulbs of people. I think you're going to see a phenomenon of this business really taking off because they couldn't see, well, how can they do the work from the Philippines? And it's pretty cool. I got some videos on our CoreAssist Facebook page. I've been interviewing people in the Philippines and just a day in the life of a remote team member and just asking them, what's it like and what they do. And anyway, I was going back to your original question. They're getting, almost double the output because there are no distractions. There's not the coffee talk around the water cooler, all that stuff. They're just like you and I are sitting here. They're sitting there, they're focused. They got their headsets on. They're hooked into the internet. They're just knocking out work. What's
the metric that you're using with the remote workers?
As far as their success?
Yeah.
It just depends on the role. Like how many calls they answer, how many calls first response they get, answered without having to escalate it, how many bills they processed, how many leads they generated. We actually do lead generation for ourselves and for others. Like, you made 100 calls today and how many turned into warm leads? You know what I mean? Like, so there's...
What kind of leads are they looking for?
Property management leads is a big one. So we call, people that are absentee owners, if you will, and call those lists and just try to get people that might be interested in us helping them manage their properties. So if you looked at some of those little videos I did, they're like 5 minutes long, but they'll tell you, the remote team members, they can do anything except for being at a location to physically hand somebody something or check something. They can do anything else can be done. We had yesterday I had a guy on that does lending. He helps our lending. He's a lending coordinator for our lending business. He's like, man, there's nothing now that we have DocuSign. There's nothing that he analyzes properties. He gives us an underwriting sheet. We make the decision. Then he starts processing the loan paperwork to get it to the attorney. You know what I mean? Like, it all happens virtually. And it's been a real eye opener for us. It helps you scale. It's for entrepreneurs. It's we've seen enough podcasts and shows, people, entrepreneurs specifically, know they need virtual employees and need that help, because you got to get those tasks off of you that are either draining you or you're not good at, or, that are keeping you from doing your best work of what it needs to make that business grow and build and be stronger, more profitable, and that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, this sounds like it can apply and benefit to any business, any industry. Most of your customers are all real estate based?
It's the majority are, because that's where we start and that's where our, biggest peer group. But we have manufacturing, call center, we have, property management, real estate brokerage. So yeah, most of it's real estate, but yeah, we have some call center type stuff where we take customer orders or returns or stuff like that. So
sometimes when people are using virtual or remote employees, I hear a complaint or a struggle with turnover, with keeping good people. Do you experience that, or do you need to pay a slightly higher rate in order to maintain good people?
So it's interesting. That's a great question. And I was just talking to some people yesterday about this. Where we shine is the whole vetting process. And so we have a very high success rate of once we place somebody with somebody, they stay and do a good job. And the reason, to me, it's like you take 100 people that have applied, you do this culture index survey, you find out, like, is that person really going to be good on the phone, or is this really more of an analytical person? And so we weed out and get down to that 2 or 3 and then send you 1 or 2 people to interview, usually 2 people, and let you pick. And I bet our success rate is probably 90% on that person still with the original person we set them with. So if you interviewed, got references from us, that would be probably the biggest thing that people would say is like, we cut out all what you just said and all that frustration, because you spend all this time trying to find somebody and then it doesn't work. It's just because you hire the wrong person, so we try to help fix that. That's where and we have a coach behind that. I should add that too. So you have a coach that is overseeing that person that works with you, helps hold them accountable, helps send you daily and weekly reports, helps you create your SOPs. So, and part of that success, and I'll just finish that, is just you get out of it what you put into it. Like if you don't spend the time and write out what you expect, you just say, hey man, I need you to start generating leads. What is that? Remember kind of talking about the vision of building a portfolio? Like that doesn't tell me anything. Like, where do I get my leads? How do I pull them? How often? How many? What's the expectation? How many you want me to call? Does that make sense? Like you got to lay all that out. And then for an entrepreneur, that's tough to like stop what you're doing and get
really
that done.
Break it down. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to break it down. If you don't, it doesn't matter who I provide or who you find. I mean, that's not going to matter because you didn't spend the time to figure that out. So that,
Dan, I'd like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
To me, it's thriving in what you love to do. What God created you to be or do, you found that and you're able to play that out every day. And in that, serving others, like that's part of, for me, that's success, is serving others and helping them have whatever success they're trying to reach. So I just think that getting to that spot where you can thrive for yourself, and out of that, I would say money will follow. Like success to me is not money. That don't focus on that. Focus on what makes you happy, what you love to do, what you're passionate about, and get after that. I think that to me, that's success. If you can get into that niche, a lot of other things will open up for you, and you'll flourish.
So figure out what your gift is and lean into that. The money will follow. Don't be singularly focused on the dollar.
Yeah, I chased the dollar one time when my first kid was coming, and that was the worst business decision I ever made. And it was all driven because I thought if I made this much more money by taking this job, that everything would be okay. And that was the longest, worst year of my life. It was, and so it was a big lesson for me to step back and say, like, there's other solutions. Like don't sweat that stuff. So,
well, thank you, Dan. Thanks for sharing your really unique path and your entrepreneurial journey. I'm fascinated by the virtual assistants and remote workers. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener where they can follow you, learn more about you?
Go to CoreAssist.com. It's for the virtual employees. My email is dan@CoreAssist.com. Cell phone 901-289-7888. Not afraid to throw it out there. That's the only phone number I've had for 20 years. And that's the only one I hope to keep for the rest of my life. But those are the main ways to reach me.
That's great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
So what was your favorite inspired money moment? There was a lot here, from Dan and his wife using the envelope system for budgeting, to Dan becoming an entrepreneur to control his own financial destiny. If pressed to pick a favorite, I'm going to go with a couple staffing-related lessons. The first is that Dan and his partner cannot run all these companies by themselves. They must find a great leader in order to start a new business. And then once they do, they're not managing by committee. Dan and his partner split their responsibilities for better accountability. Second, I love the idea of virtual staffing. Dan's example of the guy in Dallas who manages over 300 properties, but is sitting by himself in his office, that was pretty mind-blowing. And then to quantify the benefit, Dan thinks that you can 4x your return when hiring virtual employees. Those were both great lessons in leadership and outsourcing. Do you have an Inspired Money sticker yet? It looks great on a laptop. Take a screenshot or photo of the podcast, share it on social media, and tag me. InspiredMoney.fm on Instagram or RunnyMeadCap, that's RUNNYMEDECAP on Twitter. Inspired Money is edited by Christopher Wright at Wright Media. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're not yet subscribed, hit subscribe now to make sure that you don't miss next week's episode. I look forward to seeing you then. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.